Welcome to Dilli, Dali, Sachidananda Murthy. I'm extremely happy to have you in this show.
So am I. So am I. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. It's
I,
always a very wonderful program, and I'd like to be in this featured in this. So thoughtful of you. Thank you so much.
there is a specific reason for inviting you to this show. You had close association with the former Prime Minister of India, P.V. Narasimha Rao, and as the resident editor of one of the major media houses in India, Malayalam Manorama, you had many occasions to meet him. Uh, and P.V. Narasimha Rao's birth centenary was celebrated by the Andhra and Telangana region, in particular, from 28 June 2020 to 28 June 2021. But if you go by his date of birth, it was on 28 June 1921, and this is the year 2021 is in fact his 100th year of his celebrated life. And he served as India's ninth prime minister from 1991 to 1996, and he was the first prime minister from the southern part of India, and he led a much debated major economic transformation of this country, and a man who knew many languages, a man who loved literature and music. He was a rare kind of a prime minister, and moreover, everything. Personally, to me, he remains an unsung hero of the modern India. Thank you to this discussion. What is your first reaction about response to whatever I said?
No, I think what you have said about Narasimha Rao has been absolutely on the dot, and he was a very unique personality. If we look at the comparison of the prime ministers we have had since 1947, I think at the intellectual capacity he would come on level with Jawaharlal Nehru.
Absolutely.
In terms of his communicative skills and administrative experience, he would be somewhere on par with Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, because the way Dr. Manmohan Singh knew government for so many years, similarly, Narasimha Rao at the political level had that kind of understanding of governance. So, there are areas where, and he was a political Chanakya the same way, but in a very a subtle manner, like Mr. Narendra Modi. So, there are issues, and I mean, though we celebrate Mr. Deve Gowda as the or Charan Singh as the former prime ministers, it was Narasimha Rao who took the revolutionary step of land reforms as Andhra Pradesh chief minister and invested heavily for irrigation as a prime minister. So there will be parallels between him and other leaders one can see, but then he also had his own unique qualities, and that's what his 5 year prime ministership brought out both the stronger and weaker points of his personality.
Yes. And you said about the land reforms and all. What I feel, unlike other prime ministers or other political leaders of his time, even after, he had a vision for long-term interest of the country, long-term effects of whatever he was doing, and he never did anything when it comes to the reform side, which had an immediate impact or an immediate response in the forthcoming elections or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Because also one of the uniqueness of him, as both as the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, undivided Andhra Pradesh, then later as the prime minister of India was, he was he did not win the mandate for himself.
Mm.
In the Andhra Pradesh Assembly, it was a collective leadership. There were many contenders, and as you know, he became an accidental prime minister after the assassination of the prime ministerial candidate of the Congress, Rajiv Gandhi.
Yes.
So, I mean, he had, that's what he never went to the people with his own mandate. with his own request for a mandate, except in the 1996 Lok Sabha elections. So, and also he came to power at a time of extraordinary crisis for the Indian nation. Everybody talks about the balance of payment crisis which was there in 1991, but India was also riven by sectarian and caste violence. There was a huge disturbance in our bordering states of Jammu, Kashmir, Punjab, and Northeast. So the kind of situation Narasimha Rao had to confront as the prime minister of a minority government with the outside support of the AIDMK was a very daunting one.
Yes.
So, I mean, it was not just the economic crisis, but the very idea of India was under challenge at that time. As you remember, Punjab was on fire at that time. Northeast, there was a lot of insurgency happening in Assam, Mizoram, and Nagaland. And the troubles in Jammu and Kashmir had begun in 1990 after the kidnapping of the Home Minister's daughter. So, the idea of India, the unity and integrity of India, and also we had the religious strife over Ayodhya, then the Mandal unleashed the caste conflicts. So the very idea of India, unity and integrity of India, was under challenge when he took over the prime ministership.
You mentioned about the idea of India. If I ask you whether he was going by the immediate circumstances, what the immediate circumstances were demanding, or whether he had a strong conviction about an idea about India. If so, what was Narasimha Rao's idea of India?
Narasimha Rao's idea of India was also from his own experience as a young political worker, because he came from the erstwhile princely state of Hyderabad, where the Nizam of Hyderabad did not agree to the very concept of an Indian state, and he wanted to be a separate country, or even go with Pakistan. So Narasimha Rao's youth as a political activist was shaped by these very, very contrary compulsions he saw, and he had sided with the Indian freedom movement. He was passionately believed, and he had first-hand experienced what these vociferous tendencies are. So that's why we could see it in his prime ministership. He gave a free hand to Chief Minister Bian Singh and Police Director General KPS Gill to crush the militancy in Punjab, because he said once we crush the militancy in Punjab, then that can be an example for handling other regions. And he sent his very dynamic junior minister Rajesh Pilot on a hopping mission to the northeast to drum up the Accords, so that carry forward the work which had been done during the time of Rajiv Gandhi's prime ministership in these. So if we have even now some stability in the northeast, much of the contribution came during Narasimha Rao's time. He identified Hiteshwar Saikia as a person who could calm down the passions in Assam. So he did a lot of political work, because for him, the idea of a united India, I would say more of a united India, more of a India of mixed economy. He was not a socialist this thing, or he was not a Nehruvian secularist also. So I would say that he first believed in the unity and integrity, and then he believed in a different kind of economic and social systems. And that has a direct bearing on how he handled the reservations under for the OBCs or the Ayodhya issue.
No, when you said that, he was, we can't consider him as a Nehruvian secularist. If that is the case, he had to hear lot of abuses, political, and whenever the moment we say about Narasimha Rao, people talk about the way he handled the demolition of Babri Masjid. Where he went wrong, if he went wrong.
No, I think if when he became the prime minister, it was already known that he was much softer than those hardcore Nehruvian socialists in the Congress party were. He was much more softer towards the Hindu sentiment that V.N. Gadgil, the N.D. Tiwari, and many other leaders who had ruled at the governance level, the state level, they were much more softer than the hardliners. So, and also the division happened between him and hardcore secularists like Arjun Singh, who was his chief dissident. And Arjun Singh was, from day one, was questioning the secular credentials of Narasimha Rao. But Narasimha Rao chose as his home minister Shankarrao Chavan, another Congress stalwart, who was much more softer towards the Hindutva sentiments. That finally they both thought that yes, this is a nation of majority Hindus. So they were much less harsher in their perception of the sentiments of the Hindu groups. So he went wrong in the sense that his failure was to maintain law and order in Ayodhya, allowing the Kalyan Singh government to give assurances which would not fulfill, not sending the armed forces to safeguard the structure in Ayodhya.
No, whether he thought that the masjid will be demolished.
I think that is something which people who were around him thought that there was intelligence inputs to him that the demolition will happen. But then he thought that only the Supreme Court of India could prevent it, not by excessive intervention by forces of the central government. He didn't want to shed any blood by the central forces. So, which itself, the moment you decide to go to a situation with your hands tied behind your back, then you have conceded the battle.
In that case, there is an element of truth in saying that, considering other secularists in the Congress party, he was softer not only towards the Hindu sentiments, but possibly even to RSS.
Yeah, he had because again, his background as a young political activist, he was strongly influenced by Swami Ramananda Tirtha, who took up the struggle against the predominantly Muslim Hyderabad government, which was very oppressive in its treatment of the freedom fighters and the Hindus. So he had been forged in that. But then he also, post independence, merged with the Congress thought process, the majoritarianism in the Congress. But I think there was that feeling, always a suspicion among his colleagues that he was much softer on Hindutva than other congressmen, especially those who were close to the Nehru Gandhi family.
Okay, now I'm coming to one other point regarding his foreign policy. He was brilliant in it, and what I am told that he had frequent interactions with an experienced Adal Bihari Vajpayee. Am I true?
No, I would say that Narasimha Rao's thing about foreign policy was that during his long years in Delhi as a Congress General Secretary, later as a Union Minister who handled
Want to have some water?
Yeah, I think
Please,
it's
please.
always nice to, because when you travel back in time, you get thirsty.
Absolutely.
No, so he had this perception that again the non-alignment policy, which was fashioned by Nehru and strengthened by Indira Gandhi, he thought it may not be relevant for the future, so he wanted to change it. And he was the one who was interfacing with the opposition leaders. He used to talk a lot to leaders, not only Atal Bihari Vajpayee or the BJP, but also to the communist leaders. He used to have long conversation with Harkishan Singh Surjit of the CPM and Indrajit Gupta of the
CPI.
CPI.
Yeah.
So he had his own version. And also, you must remember again, as prime minister, before he could decide on his foreign policy, he became the prime minister in May 1991.
Hmm.
And that was the year the Soviet Union collapsed. And by the
Absolutely.
end of the year, so Soviet Union disintegrated into 15 countries.
Yes.
So he whatever he thought was wrong with the socialist world, the socialist political thought, that came true. So he had to reach out to find new friends. That's why in 1992, India decided to shed its apartheid attitude, political apartheid, towards Israel and establish diplomatic relations.
Was it a tough time for the new Prime Minister of India to handle a new world without a long time friend Soviet Union, or whether it was an opportunity for the new Prime Minister to work new plans?
See, it was a crisis because the global trade was under disruption. Everything, because the period of and then we had the oil shock, which almost derailed the Indian economy in 1990. The second Gulf oil shock with the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. I mean, the world was in flames literally at that time when
Yes.
Narasimha Rao took charge.
Yes.
So he had to look at a new path. That's why he came up with this very brilliant thing of look east policy, where India, which had neglected the Southeast Asian countries, the Southeast Asian tigers, just concentrated on its relations with Japan, not Korea, not Thailand, and all that. So he brought in, which of course now Mr. Modi has refined it to Act East policy and all that. But again, and to turn 180 degrees in your foreign policy, and also he annoyed the Gulf states by going with Israel, because at that time the Gulf states were totally against Israel. But then by reaching to Israel, he was also re-establishing India's relationship with the United States and Europe. So I mean, it was a very remarkable time for Indian foreign policy, and he had very poor foreign affairs ministers like Madhav Singh Solanki and others, Pranab Mukherjee, who had not much of an experience, but he handled it. And he was the one who realized that foreign policy also involves commerce and trade. So he pushed hard for agreements so that India, I mean, we all talk about WTO and others, but there was at that time GATT, General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs. And he worked very hard to push for Indian exports of textiles to go up, because countries like the US, which are the biggest importers of textiles, had tariff quotas. So, with Dr. Manmohan Singh as finance minister, P. Chidambaram as the commerce minister, and Narasimha Rao himself holding the industries portfolio, industrial policy portfolio, they pushed very hard to generate trade, because India was an inward looking economy till then. It was not depending much on export. So, that way, he looked at foreign policy not only in political strategic terms but also in economic terms.
As an expert in international politics and national politics as well, you could give the, very comprehensive view on Narasimha Rao's foreign policy. I'm thankful to you for that. But when I am coming to the internal politics part, you know,
Yeah.
not only in the foreign policy matters, even in internal policy matters, especially the financial reforms which he led
Yeah.
with Dr. Manmohan Singh. That is also a path which he has taken, a path which was not in fact Pandit Nehru's path. But but his relationships with Nehru family, what I have noticed, he never had any conflict with that family. uh, he never challenged that family. He never came out of that party like Pranab or A.K. Antony or other seniors, Congress leaders did at one time or other time. He never did that. He always remained with the Congress, and he always with the Congress family. What was their equations? Whether it was always smooth or whether it had problems.
As Narasimha Rao once told me, I had traveled with him to Arunachal Pradesh, where there were the local assembly elections. So I was talking, what is the problem with your equation with Mrs. Sonia Gandhi? I asked him, because at that time she had not yet come into politics. He said, a lot of you think that I have a problem with the Nehru Gandhis. No, my problem is with the Nehru Gandhi loyalists who shout much more than I can shout. So he says they won't carry tales against me. They tell this that I'm not true to their this. But he also was very candid, saying that half of these policies should have been implemented by Indira Gandhi herself. And he said Rajiv Gandhi tried to do it. So he was very clear that he had no problem with them. But again, after he became the prime minister, I remember what President R. Venkatraman told some of us, because President R. Venkatraman didn't like Narasimha Rao very much at that time. So he was saying, "Hey, what is the magic drug he's taking? He was all retired and he could not even walk straight, and now there's a spring in his step. He's so youthful. Power is a big aphrodisiac and all that, which he wrote in his book, My Presidential Years,
Yes, yes.
in a more dignified way." So Narasimha Rao that way thought that yes, I am the prime minister, I am the Congress president, so the buck stops with me. I should have. So that, I mean, being the ultimate ruler of India, and in India we always say, oh, you're not just the prime minister, you're the emperor of India. That happens to even prime ministers without a majority and all that. So sitting in that chair, everybody comes. The only people whom a prime minister meets are those who praise him, except when he goes to parliament or reads the newspaper or now watches TV. So I think he also thought that these people were all small pygmies who were barking at him. So I think that also the power went into, I mean, even small power goes into big people's head. So big power into a big man's head, I could say that. So, and then over a period of time, the relationship with first those around Sonia Gandhi, that is the some of the Congress leaders like Arjun Singh, N.D. Tiwari, and then her own personal team within the 10 Janpath. His relationship with them deteriorated. He thought they were conspiring against him. He had to block them. So, I mean, that occupied much of his time during the last 2 years of his prime ministership. That led to a lot of those loyalists of Sonia Gandhi being fixed under the Hawala scam and all that. So, by the CBI. So, there was this thing that he was under siege by those who are loyal to Sonia Gandhi and later by Sonia Gandhi herself. And in turn, her distrust of him also deepened because they kept saying that he has no interest in pursuing the larger conspiracy behind the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, that the notorious controversial godman Chandraswamy was close to Narasimha. So all these things, so the gulf kept widening between the two.
Now, another point I wanted to whether he was ignoring the strong criticism from the socialists and the communists on his new economic policy, or whether he was accommodative to some sort of some criticisms.
Definitely, because I think he was looking at. See, it's been well recorded that he told Dr. Manmohan Singh, "You go ahead with your decisions. I will bear the political cost, or I'll do the political management." So that is where I think. Otherwise, how could he get many amendments to laws passed as a minority prime minister? And even for the first 2 years, many a time when these bills were under consideration, the communists, as you mentioned, communists and socialists, would walk out of the parliament so that the bill will be passed without the absolute numerical majority.
Yes.
Or you would call Atal Bihari Vajpayee, brief him, get his this thing. And that means Mr. Vajpayee was not a generous man. He would extract his concessions, whatever amendments, whatever change of about phraseology and all that. So that art of compromise, art of negotiation, he was a master of that. So that way, and when he found that people like Chidambaram were too hard in negotiation, then he will take over the negotiation, do it. So that's why he could win both the right and the left for many of the legislative changes.
Okay, now coming to a major point, uh, Dr. Manmohan Singh as a phenomenon. Uh, Manmohan Singh never had a constituency. In fact, we can say that his mentor Narasimha Rao had a constituency in one respect. He had a constituency in
Yeah.
Andhra Pradesh, but how he cultivated Manmohan Singh into these heights.
So one of the things about the economic reforms is the uh, the idea of economic reforms was not that of Narasimha Rao.
Hmm.
I would give that credit to Rajiv Gandhi and his what they were being called the computer boys,
Hmm.
like Sam Pitroda, Jairam Ramesh. They were all, and then several economic advisors of the government. So they were pushing hard that. So, uh, so then Rajiv Gandhi said after his defeat in '89, when he was really battered on issues of religion and caste by the Mandal Mandir combination, he decided that I have to answer it back with a change, and also because of the total deterioration in the foreign exchange situation and other things. And if very few people would have the copy of the 1991 manifesto of the Congress Party.
Hmm.
And that Congress Party manifesto says this is Rajiv's PowerPoint style.
Hmm.
Within the first 50 days, following things will be done. Within the first 100 days, within the first 365 days, like that. But the chairman of the manifesto committee was none other than P.V. Narasimha Rao. A lot of people thought it was a ceremonial position for a man who is going to retire, not going to contest, who has packed his bag. But then he spent a lot of time on that because he had always been thinking about policy and this thing. It's like, so there were three, four people. When you meet them, you can talk manifesto non-stop. One was Narasimha Rao. Other is Dr. Murli Manohar Joshi.
Hmm.
I think he chaired 6 manifesto, general election manifesto committees of the BJP. I mean, he could, Dr. Joshi would remember the entire manifesto of the BJP.
Okay.
So, and Rao had read this. So that's where. Then the man who chose Manmohan Singh to be the prime minister, who persuaded him, who advised at that time on the cabinet and ministers and senior, was Dr. P.C. Alexander.
Hmm.
Now, Dr. P.C. Alexander was principal secretary to Indira Gandhi, and then he had been High Commissioner to UK. Now, both Narasimha Rao and Alexander had one common experience. They were always in India, but their big foreign experiences showed them that we needed him. Narasimha Rao, after he lost the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, spent almost a year in the United States as a commoner.
Okay.
His relations were there, and he studied the American system, how reforms, changes, technology is there. And Dr. Alexander, as High Commissioner to United Kingdom, and with his earlier UN deputation, he also wanted changes to happen in the Indian society. And the first speech of Narasimha Rao in Parliament uh, in 1991, my major one, he talks about how he wants to end the drudgery of the women in India. They
Hmm.
should not be all spending all their time washing clothes and uh, cleaning vessels. What is wrong in getting them washing machines and dishwashers? Which in 1991, washing machines and dishwashers were not at all, commonplace things
Common.
which are today. So his mind was already on that. But then the manifesto of Rajiv Gandhi, prepared by his team of Sam Pitroda, Jairam Ramesh, and others, then the induction of Manmohan Singh, Dr. P.C. Alexander's advice, because Dr. P.C. Alexander also brought in the Principal Secretary A.N. Verma, who was his protege, who was the Commerce and Industry Secretary in earlier government. So Dr. Alexander decided, he said, give the commerce portfolio to Chidambaram because we need a good lawyer to handle trade negotiations. So like that. And he told PV, he used to call him PV. PV, keep the industries portfolio. I remember in a Kautilya Mar guest house, Dr. Alexander telling us, I've told PV to keep. And in your state, Kerala, PJ Kurian to be the Minister of State for Industries. So that was Dr. Alexander. I mean, he was an old first batch of IAS, ICS kind of mentality. So then, that's where then PV and Manmohan Singh together pushed forward the economic reform.
Okay.
But then he did the political management because, like always in the Congress party, within the Congress party, there are rightists and left, socialists versus the secularists versus Hindutva people, which has been the case in the Congress ever since it was founded.
Yes.
The radicals and moderates debate of Gokhale, Tilak. I mean, we know the whole history of that. So the same thing was there in the Congress. I think Narasimha Rao could manage a lot of, because also the reforms came as a shock because we had seen the policy paralysis of VP Singh and Chandrasekhar governments. And people were scared that Indian gold was pledged
Yes.
with the Reserve Bank in UK. I mean, it was a IMF conditionalities were there. But the shock worked.
Okay. Now, do you think that the International Congress paid due respects to P.V. Narasimha Rao on the centenary year?
I think the Congress had this, love-hate relationship for him because the moment you acknowledge his contribution, then you're diminishing the contribution of the Nehru-Gandhi family. So he was seen as an outsider. And then the party's dominant sections have not forgiven him for the Babri Masjid demolition even now. I think, and they all look at it as the main cause for the decline of the party's support base. Though, I mean, there are others who argue that it was Narasimha Rao's failure as Congress president for 5 years to revive the organization. Organization was already in a moribund state. In 1985, Rajiv Gandhi had said it had become a party of power brokers. So, Narasimha Rao's failure as the Congress president, he occupied both the posts, was that he had no time. He had very cynical office bearers like Janardhan Pujari or Jitendra Prasada and others who nobody paid attention to the party's revival. So, I mean, as you know, same vein has continued. Even now, the group of 23 have said there's no internal democracy. They said bring back the Congress election committee, parliamentary board, and the parliamentary board was cynically abolished by Narasimha Rao in 1992 after he was re-elected as a Congress president, and the party adopted a resolution that one man, one post will not apply to him. So he said, why do I need this all-powerful parliamentary board? He abolished it. But from 1992 to 2021, the party has not bothered about the parliamentary board.
Yes.
And the Congress Working Committee is not functional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming to P.V. Narasimha Rao's certain personal traits. How was he? You had many occasions to interact with him. How was P.V. Narasimha Rao as a conversationist?
Oh, he was a brilliant conversationalist. He could speak on any subject. He could engage your attention. And if you asked him an interesting question, he would go very detailed into that. But also, he had the standard tricks of a brilliant man. If he didn't like your question, he'll be very elliptical. He would either give you a very short answer or will go off on a tangent. He would know how to avoid a question or how to sidestep that. Oh, it was a brilliant conversation.
It was very, very brilliant. And
Very deep understanding of India's history, culture, and very strange theories of economy. And I mean, he was amazing. And one of the things I remember, he asked me once, "What did you study in college?" So I said, "Sir, I studied physics, chemistry, mathematics." Okay, let us discuss chemistry. He said, this was 20 years ago. I said, come, let us chat. And so then he was telling me the work done by the National Chemical Laboratory of India. I said, sir, where did you find that? He said, no, I was handling HRD Ministry, Human Resource Development. So these scientists had come and made a presentation. I mean, that was the interest he had.
yes, yes. No, I had only one occasion to meet him. First of all, I'm thanking you for giving me a brilliant book on Beethoven to on them back.
Okay.
But I'm
I
saying
know
something
that's
about
your
music.
passion.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I'm going to say something about music and Narasimha Rao. I had been to P.V. Narasimha Rao's residence after he was staying in that Motilal Nehru Marg.
Yeah, nine Motilal Nehru Marg.
Man
Yeah.
Motilal Nehru Marg after retirement, he was there. I had been to him with some CDs which Akashwani Sangeet had released, and just to present it. I was deputed for that. Therefore, I went there, and he surprised me. He came, sat with me, and he started discussing about Ustad Nizar Hussain Khan, one particular
Okay.
Hindustani musician of a particular gharana. And he says that he was guru of Ustad Ustad Rashid Khan. I said yes. Then he said that the way he sing Darbar, the way he sing Bilawal, and he started talking about the Ustad Nizar Hussain Khan. And he said that you please try to release a CD of Nizar Hussain Khan. It's very rarely available in market and all. He said, therefore he was a different prime minister altogether. And
Yeah,
and as you said, he discussed chemistry with you, and
yeah. And once I forget, one of the staff members told me, sir, he's the first Indian politician to have a Walkman with him, he said. Remember the Sony Walkman
yes, yes, I remember. Yes.
with your earphone and with battery operated where you could hear. So he said, because he had that kind of interest in music and technology, and he would, I think that's where he spent his spare time acquiring all kinds of knowledges, all kinds of information, which came into his, he was a connoisseur in his very, very special way.
Okay, we are concluding this brilliant
Yeah.
conversation on P.V. Narasimha Rao. And if I ask you to point out one drawback in Narasimha Rao as a statesman or as a politician, do you have anything to say?
I think his main strength was that when he took risks, uh, he did not follow through with them. So that's where I think he was, and he mistrusted a lot of people as he became isolated in power. That was the thing. Otherwise, if he had reached out to the newer generation in the Congress, if he had built more bridges within the government, it would have been very helpful. So that sense of isolation which we saw in his final years, I think that affected him badly. That was a big weakness I saw.
Thank you. Thank you, Sachidananda Murthy,
So it
for
was a pleasure, Gopal Krishnan,
no,
always
we,
talk with
we,
you.
we
You
together
draw more
remembered.
out of me.
I missed what you said now.
No, you draw a lot out of me, I said. Good, but a lot of information out of me. Thank you so much.
So I thought you are the best person. Mostly Dali is a Malayalam program, but I thought you are the right person to talk about a great Indian politician and one of the most important Indian prime ministers. Thank you for your quality time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.